Hey, what's up, everybody? I wanted to take a minute and welcome you to the Donut Shop podcast. I had a suggestion from somebody who watches the show and thought it was a good idea. I'm always open to suggestions about the show. And he mentioned that I never usually introduce myself or at least tell you about who I am. And with adding new fans or new viewers all the time, it might be a good idea to go over that. So my name is Justin. I've been a police officer for 20 years. I'm actually getting ready for retirement. I'm going to retire and start doing this podcasting stuff full time. During my career, I've worked on road patrol. I've been a crisis negotiator, did that for about 8 years. It was great training, learned a lot about mental health and working with people. I was a school resource officer. I worked in the elementary school and then in the high school. I did that for 6.5 years. Then I also moved into the community resource unit and public information officer unit. So I did a lot of community engagement. I ran our social media for the department. And then I also spoke with the news. Kind of leads into this, even though I was a podcaster before I was in that unit. I've been doing podcasting since about 2012. I started with a soccer podcast with some friends for a local soccer team. We had a great time. It was a little different than this, obviously, but I was on the mic and doing that kind of stuff. Then eventually in 2020, started this podcast with a friend of mine, Nick, and he's no longer on the show, but the show drives on, and here we go. Basically, it's a cop sitting in a donut shop and someone interesting walks in. They don't always have to be law enforcement based. As a law enforcement officer, we know when we're in uniform, pretty much everybody comes up and talks to us. Especially when we're trying to take a break and eat dinner or eat a lunch or something like that. It's not usually a bother, and sometimes you get interesting stories out of it. So that's kind of where I created the premise for this podcast and what it is today. Now let's get into the episode.
Calling all units, calling all units. Donut Shop has a fresh dozen. Go ahead and take a 1040.
Welcome back to the Donut Shop podcast. Today I'm here with a guy I've known for a long time. His name's Jesse Gossman. He's a retired Fort Lauderdale Police Detective, former Army Infantry Squad leader who deployed to Iraq at the age of 19, longtime dive team member, and one of South Florida's earliest pioneers in cryptocurrency investigations. Jesse's career spans combat zones, underwater recovery operations, midnight patrol shifts, and 11 years in economic crimes, which most cops find some of the most boring work that you'll ever come across in law enforcement, where he watched financial fraud evolve from green dot cards to mortgage scams to billion-dollar crypto schemes. I forgot to tell you a story that is not safe for the podcast, so maybe I'll tell you after. While most agencies were trying to catch up, Jesse went deep, earning his master's degree in forensic accounting, stacking fraud and crypto certifications, and ultimately founding his company, the Block Audit, a firm focused on cryptocurrency, forensic analysis, training, and expert witness services. Now he's advising internationally on counter-terrorism finance and anti-money laundering, proving that today's battlefield isn't always kinetic. Sometimes it's digital. In this episode, we're going to talk about military leadership versus police culture and the promotion model in law enforcement, and then the fraud epidemic most people don't see, and why your exit before you need it might be the smartest move you ever make. From combat boots to blockchain, let's get into it. So what's up, Jesse? We went to high school together. Well, we were just talking about it just before. We went to elementary school for a time, middle school together, and high school together.
Yeah. I remember you from JROTC. I think you were one of my company commanders at some point in JROTC.
I was JROTC and Explorer Post in JROTC, camping and stuff like that, right? Yeah, we went camping. I was the Explorer Post commander, and then I was like I was Command Sergeant Major, so I did what I love to do: honor guard, color guards, and stuff like that. And then went to Battalion XO, so I did staff.
We used to play paintball quite a
Hell
bit
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Over across from Publix over there in the woods.
Yeah, yeah. When you said play in the woods, I was going to bring that up. I was going to say, oh, the old woods that is now one of them. The one where we played turned into a park. It was just a Melaleuca forest that they
Yeah, yeah.
demolished and turned it into a city park or a town park. And then the one right next to it that we also played in sometimes just got mowed over to get turned into somebody's house probably or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
But
But
yeah,
with all
dude.
that, man, I haven't seen you in probably 20 years. I don't think I've seen you since.
No,
I
for sure. Yeah.
stay in touch with you on, I mean, I see what you're doing on social media, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a long time.
Yeah. Social media makes it easy and hard to get together. Like I think we're all so busy anyways, but the good thing with social media is that we don't have to totally like drift away from each other and we can kind of just pick up where we left off sort of thing, rolling. Granted, we probably left off like in high school. We ran into each other
Yeah.
occasionally
Yeah,
on the job, but
but it, yeah, it makes it to where, you kind of almost feel like you've stayed in touch.
Mhm.
And then, and now that, we're actually together, it's like, oh, I don't have to catch up on everything you've been doing because I kind of have been seeing it from the outset,
Totally. Yeah, yeah. You can have those conversations as if you're just like filling somebody in on the minute details or the stuff that we didn't necessarily present on social media. That makes it easy. So it's that's the way I see it, especially with Facebook. Facebook is that little older type thing. Like I don't. I think I look back at some of my old Facebook posts or like the timeline kind of represents them to you, and I'm like, dude, yeah, I was doing that where I was like posting like just took a shit,
Yeah.
just ate lunch.
Right. Sometimes Facebook wants to like remind you how stupid you were like 10 years ago. You're like, geez, I said that.
Yeah, it is smart. Granted, we kind of do that now on stories. Stories kind of do that same thing for you. And then if I put it on Instagram and it ends up on Facebook, but it is what it is. And I do have a different society or a different group of people on Facebook than I have on Instagram. I don't necessarily let everybody into Facebook. And I kept it a secret for a long time, just because of the job. I just recently changed it to my last name that I didn't used to have on it, just because you never know what happens on the job and who's going to come looking for your
Yeah.
Facebook and everything. And we tend to have a habit of putting too much information out there.
For sure. Yeah.
Which you probably learn about that we'll talk about a little bit later in your financial fraud career of investigations and stuff. But yeah, man, yeah, we used to play paintball. It was always the JROTC kids versus the Publix crew. The Publix by our house used to have a crew of guys that played paintball, and it was always the ROTC guys versus so you had guys in like Army Navy surplus stuff from Vietnam era running around, because we thought that was cool. And then you had Publix guys that were just a bunch of rednecks and stuff doing that. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. So you started, right after high school, you jumped into the National Guard.
Yeah. So actually in high school, so I went
Yeah.
to basic training between my junior and senior year, because that was like, since the time I was probably 8 years old and watched Rambo, I was like, that's what I want to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then getting into JROTC, it was like I got to play Army.
Yeah.
And then really my intent was not really to go to the National Guard. My intent was like, how can I get into the Army as fast as possible? And the National Guard said, well, we'll let you go to basic training and be in the Army. You don't have to wait till you graduate high school. So,
And they were always so good to us. The Guard recruiters
yeah.
like loitered around our JROTC classes and like would have fun with us.
Oh yeah.
And
Took a skydiving.
skydiving. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like, that was my original intent was, I'll get into the National Guard and then I'll go active duty was always my intent. So then after, the way it worked was you would go to basic training between your junior and senior year, and then you would go back for your MOS training. So I was in infantry, so they went back to infantry school. And infantry school, it's like one station unit training. So it's like typically you would go through it all at once. So what happens when you come back after you graduate high school is they roll you right back in with another company that's been going through it. So you end up doing like a few more extra weeks that they kind of just throw you back into it and you roll right into your infantry training. So I did that and graduated from infantry school in like a month before 9/11. So yeah,
August.
yeah,
Yeah.
August of 2001. Yeah.
Wow. Oh my
And
gosh.
then, and it's funny because even when I was there, like we had the opportunity, you could actually switch to go active duty. And so they asked if any of us wanted to do that. And I was absolutely, I'm doing it. Like that was my whole plan. I'm doing it.
Yeah. Now's my opportunity. I might as
Yeah,
well just jump on it.
I'm doing it. And then I had to call my parents. So they're like, yeah, call your parents, like make sure everything's good. My mom convinced me. She's like, hey, listen, you can always go active duty. Like, come back and try college. Like, just try college and give it one semester. And if you don't like it, then you can always go back. So I was like, all right, I'll wait. So
Yeah.
that's why I came back, gave college a try. But then 9/11 happened, and kind of even though it made me want to go active duty even more, we kind of like started doing stuff with the National Guard. So
Yeah, I know the
that's my
Florida
story.
National Guard was, I mean, obviously I know because I could see it being in Florida still, but the Florida National Guard was super busy with doing work. But you started doing work here locally, like you did,
Yeah. So
like airport.
yeah. So right after, so for anyone that was around back then, you remember when the National Guard went into the airports. So we did that. That was like I think we went in maybe October or November. It was like a month, maybe after 9/11, maybe 2 months. I don't remember exactly. But then went to Fort Lauderdale Airport, and so for 6 months, I was there, and that was interesting, and it gave me a taste of it kind of scratched a little bit of an itch because it's like you had to get up every morning, go to PT because it's like you're basically active duty at that point. You had to do your shifts at the airport, but other than that, you were
Were you
living with
like,
your squad leader and
were you out of the armory like in Fort Lauderdale, or were you like,
they actually put us up in hotels.
no shit,
So
even though you lived
yeah,
20 minutes away?
yeah. Well, so I didn't always stay at the hotel. I could go back, but I still had to show up for PT. Like we were staying at the right in Fort Lauderdale at the Embassy Suites right on
Oh, on
17th
17th
Street
Street? Yeah.
Causeway. Yeah. So they would have PT formations out there in the morning and
Free
run down to the
breakfast.
beach.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was
It's
interesting.
a tough deployment.
It was interesting. But yeah, so that there was
But
that.
you and having gone to foreign countries, we're not used to it necessarily in America, where you see law enforcement, but then you also see military walking through airports, and we see that. I see that in other countries, and so it's not abnormal. But that was something that happened during that time, and we didn't necessarily see it. This was obviously pre TSA, and pre probably even for us in like Fort Lauderdale area, like a more saturation of BSO doing work in the airport. But I mean, you guys were just on patrol, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, look, we were really just there for presence, I guess. I mean,
yeah,
look, I was like 18 years old, you know what
yeah,
I mean? So
yeah,
I was just there like looking at girls and like thinking I
yeah,
was so cool because,
yeah.
here I'm standing at the airport in camouflage with a, M16. But it was interesting because there was a lot of like patriotism then, of course, right
Yeah.
after 9/11. So there was people that were like thanking us and stuff. But then there was also a lot of people that at the time were like, this like a third world country. They're upset with us. Like, and they would like show us like kind of animosity for being there. And like I get it now. Like I kind of understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Like from that like feeling like it was overly repressive. But 18-year-old kid, I'm like, well, you're just an asshole. You know what I mean? I'm just
Right.
here trying to do what I'm told to do. But
Yeah, right now, like we can look at it and go, "Oh, okay." Especially with conspiracy stuff
yeah,
that
yeah.
that go out now. That all right, maybe.
I can see what
Whoa,
the concern would be for some people, right? But that
yeah,
that wasn't the intent,
yeah,
at
you're,
least especially not for me. I don't
yeah.
think that was intent for anyone that put us there. I don't think that was the intent. But I can see how people would be.
Or if they're also from foreign countries like Latin America, where they know they have repressive governments and that utilize the military to repress or hold back their citizens. Maybe they're looking at you kind of like, oh, they're doing what they do in Nicaragua and
Yeah,
in some of these countries. So yeah, interesting. But I'm sure there was a way higher level of
yeah,
patriotism
for
going
sure.
on,
Yeah,
during that point. So you get that when how long was the change to like, hey, look, guards going to Iraq?
yeah. So like we did that for 6 months. So that would take us into 2002. Then I kind of did what they call like guard bumming. Like I would get on
Oh yeah,
ADSW, which is like active duty for special work. Like, cause
yeah,
I didn't want to be in college. Like as much I mean, that was the only thing I'm there to do right at this point. Cause I'm 18, 19. Like my role is to go to college, right? At least that's the only other thing that I would want to do is go be in the Army,
Yeah.
right? And so I was kind of in this weird position where it's like I was scratching the itch of being in the Army, but still had to try to go to college. So I was going to classes and not applying myself, just not wanting to be there at all. Taking up any time I could get active duty special work orders. So I would just go to the armory and, for like, they'd be like, all right, this month we have enough to pay you for the month. So I'd just be there, just doing bitch work really. But it was like, I got to be there. Like, so that kind of went on for about a year. And then at the end of 2002, just prior to, the Iraq war kicking off, we got orders for mobilization. Obviously, we didn't know exactly what was going on. We were originally told that we were going to go to the Sinai Peninsula for like a peacekeeping operation. And that ended up being, we did a 3-month train up at Fort Stewart. And then we shipped out to Jordan in January of 2003. So we were in Jordan and then stayed there until the war kicked off and then crossed the border into Iraq.
And then off it goes.
Yeah.
And by that time, you'd earned rank to be a squad leader? Or
No, I wasn't a squad leader at that deployment. So I ended up, so the whole career path was I when I was there, I went over as a PFC, became a specialist, and then came back, stayed in. I was in for 9 years. I ended up becoming a staff sergeant, not while I was deployed, but when I got back, and then had a break in service, went back in to go to officer candidate school, and then did that. But yeah, during the deployment, I was started as an RTO, which is the radio telephone operator.
Okay.
Which is basically the guy that you see in the movies that follows the lieutenant around. Hated that job.
Yeah.
Absolutely hated it. And then fortunately, by the time we left Jordan and went into Iraq, I got moved into a squad and as a rifleman in our first squad.
Nice. Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. I mean, obviously I get a lot more, introduction to it and stories of it now through some of these podcasts, through Counterculture we were talking about before the show, through some of our guys, and then some of the fans of the shows that were involved and that were in and stuff. So, big up to all you guys that pulled up and went over there and did your thing, over in Iraq, during that early 2000s time, crazy time. And so you did all that, and then you left, and then you kind of zoomed through your explanation on how you went through, you ended up going officer candidate school and stuff like that, but you were already back here. You were already back here and living and sort of doing your thing.
Yeah. So basically, I was in Iraq from 03 to 04. We were in Iraq for about 15 months.
Yeah.
And that, had some incredible experiences there, obviously, that I think shaped who I became. I think they still continue. So one of the things I think that isn't always articulated well is that you think like going off, especially as 19 years old, like being thrown into all these different experiences, it certainly changes you in the short term. But I think it grows you up later in life. It like you take those experiences you had and you may not learn the lessons from them in the moment, but even to this day, like I still learn lessons from those experiences I had 20 years ago. I don't know if that makes sense.
Right. Like almost like your brain's not formed enough.
Right.
Like you could do the activity there, be successful, be as safe as possible, survive, all that kind of stuff, accomplish the mission. But your brain's not developed at 19 years old to apply it to everyday living.
Right. And I think one of the ways to think about it is it's almost like you're writing the algorithm that your brain is going to use to decipher everything else. It's the roadmap that your brain is going to use the rest of its life to understand things or to look at the world. And so I think that was a huge part in writing the algorithm in my mind of how I'm going to assess things the rest of my life. So I hadn't learned all the lessons yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I left there, I hadn't learned those lessons.
No.
I just wrote kind of had a piece of that algorithm written then. And then even to this day, now I learn lessons still from that experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like and I think that's one of those things that continues to grow with you. Because look, when I came back, it's not like I came back from Iraq and I was like, oh, I'm grown now.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I was still an idiot. I was an absolute idiot. And it's like, but, I still think, even though I didn't grow up from that, it was the experiences there that helped me grow up for the next 20 years, right?
Definitely. Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty profound, of a thought process. And I think a lot of people our age that lived through that are starting to learn that now. You may have recognized it a little earlier, but I think some people are all still learning that, and you can't almost tell somebody, listen, you're gonna know. I mean, because if you told us all in our 20s, hey, all this stuff you're going through right now, whether it's military, college, law enforcement stuff, you're going to learn so much and you're going to utilize it later in life. Kind of like telling us about our pension,
Yeah.
do all this stuff, save money, extra, all that stuff. Okay. Yeah. No, I'm going to spend all my money right now because I'm living right now. And it's not necessarily the greatest idea in the world, but, yeah, I don't know. Super, super profound. It kind of blows my mind thinking about that with the stuff that you guys learned and saw, over there, dealing with the people, dealing with people in country, dealing with command structures, and then dealing with society when you come back, because you came back to a different world. You came back to a patriotic version than what some of our guys see in like the Vietnam era, coming back and people not liking service members, where you guys came back, and really since then there's been this sort of shift towards, veteran recognition. You go to a Panthers game, they recognize veterans every Panthers game, and part of that is because the ownership is West Point graduates, but they're consistently recognizing veterans, as compared to sometimes history.
Kind of a interesting take on that, and that kind of ties things in with when I was at the airport as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I got injured when I was over there, and I came back. I got to come back for about 2 months. I was back in the States, and so that's a whole nother story, because when I was there, like being with the National Guard, we were thrown into this, and there was not a depth of experience in. I mean, there was really no experience broadly in conducting a war and like all the logistical things that go into the war. Because I mean, this thing, just kicked off, and it's like when I got injured, they gave me orders to get back to the States. No one really told me how to get back to the States. I got like these orders saying you can go fly. And so I would have to show up and be like, hey, I've got orders that here's this number that allows me to fly on basically any military aircraft. But it's basically like my first sergeant was like, hey, here you go. This is all we can do. There isn't like a ticket booth, right? Like, it's not like, here's your here's your path home. So when I got like, I had to like I'm basically like hitchhiking, like hitched a ride to, various places. And it's like, I'd have to go to like the Air Force desk and be like, hey, do you guys got a flight going out? So in this one, I actually went back and forth a few times, which it would take the whole podcast to go through this, but I ended up getting lost like overseas, like all by myself.
And there's no, and it's not today's day and age where you have a supercomputer in your pocket.
No, like, so
this is early 2000s and we have flip phones.
Yeah.
You may not even have Nextel.
Well, and I didn't have those overseas. Right. So
true.
The point, like, so basically what it ended up happening was I had, I ended up getting myself to Qatar, and it's actually through like three different flights I had to take, and I went to Saudi Arabia. Then ended up, they're like, oh yeah, we have this flight going to Qatar. So I ended up getting to Qatar, and then I check in there, and as I have a cast on my leg, and I get there, and because like this is where the National Guard thing comes in. At that point, everyone was divided into the Third Army, which is like Army level, like big, like commands, right? It was either Third Army or Fifth Army. So when I show up and I'm on crutches in a cast, and I'm like, all right, the first thing you got to do is go get like your billet to like where you're going to stay. And it was also a huge transition because we were in Ramadi in Iraq, and then we're like on a combat, like we're like in an outpost where it's like, hey, whatever you need, like there is no like bureaucracy. It's like, hey, no, this is just about helping each other out.
Yeah.
But when I get to Qatar, and they're like, oh, you need to go check in and get billets. I have to get a meal card to go to like to be able to go get food from the chow hall. So I have to sign out for this stuff. So I'm like, well, I don't even know who I'm a part of. I don't know if I'm part of 5th Army or 3rd Army. I'm like, I think we're part of 3rd Army, but I think we were in 3rd Army when we were in Jordan, and then we got reassigned to 5th Army because like we're National Guard. We got kind of passed around. And so I show up and I go into the 3rd Army, like sign-in desk or whatever. And they're like, what unit are you with? Never heard of it. And like, oh no, you're not with us. Go check 5th Army. And so I walk over to the 5th Army one, and they're like, nah, go check 3rd Army. I'm like, I was just there. And at this point I'm a specialist. Like I don't really have juice. Like I don't.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do? I walk outside and I sit on a bench, or actually on a curb. And this first sergeant walks by. He's from the 101st. And he walks by and I'm like, excuse me, first sergeant. And he like looks down at me like he's annoyed. Like, who the hell are you talking to me? Like this specialist. Like, I'm like, listen, here's what happened. I'm injured. I got here. Like, no, I don't even know where to go. Like, I can't get a meal card to go get food. And he's like, all right. So he takes pity on me. And he's like, hey, we got extra. I'll figure that out. I'll get your meal card. We got extra cots. You can go sleep where we're at. So I go over there, and then he tells me like, hey, you need to go check in with this office because that's what's going to get you back to the States. You have, because I had orders that I was supposed to show back up at Fort Stewart to the convalescent battalion or whatever. And so I get back, I go talk to them, and they're like, okay, the next rotator going out to the States is in a month. We're going to put you on that. So I'm like, I got to stay here for a month. I'm like, this is bullshit.
In Qatar.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, it kind of sucked. And so we, after speaking with them, I go back and I sit at the barracks, and there's some other guys there talking, and they're talking about how they had to go to, and, at this point I'm actually in Kuwait. So there's 2 different times I was traveling. This was actually in Kuwait, this final step. So I was in Kuwait at Camp Doha. And so they talk about going to the Kuwait International Airport to go pick somebody up or do something. I'm like, hey, can I go with you? So I go with them to the Kuwait International Airport, and I'm like, screw this. I'm going to buy a ticket and I'm going to fly home because my orders say I have to be in Fort Stewart in 30 days. As long as I show up in Fort Stewart, and no one here knows who I am. Doesn't care about me. You're not really
checked in.
I'm not checked in at all. So I'm like, screw it. So I go to the Kuwait International Airport. I walk over to the Kuwait like airlines or whatever. I'm like, hey, can I fly back to the States? I'm like, I don't have a passport. And I showed them my military ID. They're like, yeah, you can fly on that. I'm like, okay. Because I don't know. Again, I'm 19 years old. I'm like trying to figure this thing out as I go along. So I had to go to the ATM. They had an ATM there, and I had my card with me, and I was able to withdraw, like, I think it was 600 dinar at the time I had to pay for the flight. And I bought a flight to Miami from Kuwait. I think we went to Spain, and then from Spain straight into Miami. I ended up getting to North Carolina. So I got into North Carolina, then I had to buy another ticket from North Carolina to get back to Fort Lauderdale. I bought a ticket to Fort Lauderdale. I show up in Fort Lauderdale, and mind you, I haven't spoken to my parents. We didn't have, at that time, there was no communications over there either. They had no way. You could get a DSN line, which was like this way to call the States, but it was always a pain to try to get through. So my parents didn't know I was injured. They didn't know where I was. I hadn't talked with them in probably 5 months. And so I get to Fort Lauderdale, and as I'm crutching my way down this path, like the entire airport stops and starts chanting USA.
Because you're still in BDUs.
I'm still in my DCUs. Like, because I literally, because I'm literally coming back. Like, I'm in my DCUs. This is all I had. Like, this is like, so like the entire airport's chanting USA, USA. I'm like, well, this is surreal. And I'm
legit, like honor flight stuff, coming in.
It's so weird. And I'm like, I don't like that kind of attention. Generally, I'm like, this is so weird. But I'm going, and as I'm coming up to the gate, I see this deputy, Mike Ivy, I think his name was, if he's still around. But so I knew him from when I worked at the airport with the National Guard. So I hadn't seen him in a year, but he was always one of the officers that was at the gate with me. So I haven't seen him in a year. And then he looks up and sees me coming down in my DCUs, crutching. And he's like, Gossman, like, what happened? And I'm like, we've been in Iraq. And he's like, well, what are you doing back here? I'm like, well, I'm trying to get home. And he's like, well, how are you getting home? I'm like, well, I don't know yet. I was going to call a cab. He's like, no, you're not. He's like, hold on, let me call my sergeant. He calls the sergeant. Hey, I got to take this guy home. So I get in the car with him. He takes me home. And again, haven't talked to my parents, man. And so
and that's the crazy thing about not today.
And we didn't have email. Like today you'd be emailing, texting. Like we didn't have any of that stuff.
You'd probably they'd be getting the play-by-play almost. I'm sure today.
It was letters. But we were the last generation to go there where letters meant something, and I still have all those letters. You know.
Wow. Wow. So it's legit movie type stuff.
It really
where
was.
You see it in a movie and you just don't understand how people can just show up today.
Yeah, it was.
But like back then, it was knock on the door.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. When I got into North Carolina, I could have got on a payphone and called.
Yeah.
But at that point, I was like, I'm already committed. Like, no, I'm going to show up at my parents' house.
Yeah, now I've made it this fucking far.
So, yeah, man, he takes me back and I'm like, hey, hit the sirens. So he hits the sirens. My parents come out, like, what's going on? And then I get out and they see me in my DCUs with my cast on my leg. And it was such an interesting thing. Anyway, and then that started a whole other process. I ended up cutting my cast off, right? Because I was like, screw that. I have to be back at Fort Stewart in like 3 weeks. And my buddies and I have like 30 grand in my account because I've been saving money when I was over there. I'm like, I'm calling the boys, and we went and rented jet skis. And I'm like, I can't do that with a cast on my leg. So I cut the cast off my leg.
So, and at no point, I'm not fast forwarding, but at no point are you considered AWOL.
No, because I have my orders say I have to be in Fort Stewart.
Yeah. And that's
a given date. Yeah.
Like,
so
and once those orders are there.
I was on convalescent leave, but that was the thing. It was like, I'm not going to spend my convalescent leave sitting in a tent in Kuwait.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, I'm getting back to the States. So yeah. So, I lived like a king for like that next 2 weeks with all my high school buddies. Like, hey, I got money, let's go. Wow. So then I showed back up at Fort Stewart. That was a whole nother story, man. Like I was there for about a month, and then went to the doctor and was like, hey, I'm good, send me back. And even though my leg really never healed, it still hurts to this day. But he made me jump on it, and he's like, all right, if you're good with it, I'm good with it. So I'm like, yep, send me back. So I went back, and then Then was there for another 6 months after that.
Amazing. All right. Well, we'll take a quick break and then we'll be right back. That was a great story. Yo, what's up, guys? I want to do a follow-up. I used to run an ad or commercial for my friends at HPTRT, Human Performance, talking about like testosterone therapy or, all that kind of stuff. I finally I've been using it. I've been, a member of the program for over 6 months now. I got my second round of labs, and I'm going to be upfront and honest with you. When I first was tested, I was at 330. I'm a 43-year-old man, and my test was at 330. I didn't even go through the injections. I'm going through a couple different types of prescription pills that they have to help me out, all legal, all on the up and up. But after this 6 months, my test has gone up to 910. As somebody who works out 3 to 4 times a week, wants to stay young, wants to stay healthy with all this stuff. It's helped with all kinds of stuff, like my focus, continuing to get me like the best sleep that I've ever gotten. I've enjoyed it. So go over to hp-trt.com and check it out. You can bring, if you've had lab work within the last 6 months, you can bring your own lab work and they'll start you up. If you haven't, then you pay for the lab work through them. Or you can just go to your own doctor and do your lab work through your normal insurance, which I'm sure has a zero copay, if anything. And use the code DSP20, and that'll get you 20% off forever, as long as you're a member, as long as you use Human Performance. So it's a great program, good people over there. So go ahead and get it done. And if you've been thinking about it, or if you've looked at recent tests in your testosterone and you want a boost of that kind of stuff, get into it, because you can also get the testosterone through them as well as peptides and other things. So DSP20 will get you 20% off. Good luck. Hey, come here. No, bring it in real close. I got something for you. Did you subscribe yet? Right down there. Hit that subscribe button and the bell notification, because you got to know when we're going to give you a show. Do it. Go now. I'm waiting. Come on. Right there. All right, back to the show. All right, we're back. These should still be recording. So we're back. So, amazing stories. And like you said, several aspects, which I'm sure we could do entire podcasts on. But So you do your time on that activated active duty type status through the guard and everything, but then you come back, what kind of like rotates you into the law enforcement idea, or
Yeah.
getting on with Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah. So I think after I got back from that, I think I had experienced a lot of things that I thought I was missing. You know what I mean? Like I actually got to see what it was like to be full time in the Army. Like I saw in the movies. There's so many times that I got to experience combat, and so I felt like I'd scratched that itch. So kind of like I had, as I had said before, when I was trying to kind of half-ass going to college, I didn't. My mind wasn't in it.
Yeah, you were out there looking, you were
Yeah.
yearning for something else.
Yeah, yeah. But I got to scratch that itch, and when I got back, I was like, you know what? No, I want to go to school now. So I got back. It really was like 2005. Started going to school. Met my wife now, Danielle. We were dating.
You guys didn't know each other before?
What we did,
Yeah.
so she had a huge crush on me in high school, and
Awesome.
she'll be glad that I got to get this out on the podcast. Right?
Hell yeah.
So we met on MySpace, right?
Yes.
Well, so she knew. So she was in ROTC.
Dude, I was always under the impression that you guys were high school sweethearts. So
No, no,
yeah,
no.
okay.
So,
all right.
so she was in ROTC as well. She was 2 years younger than me, and she's gonna kill me. She's gonna be so pissed.
Yes. I love it. Let's get the drama out.
But she was dating someone in high school. I knew who she was in high school,
Right.
but I was like 2 years ahead of her, and
And we had separate campuses and
Yeah.
stuff like that during that time. So yeah.
but she apparently had a huge crush on me in high school. And so when I got back in 2005, I was on MySpace and I got a message from her on MySpace that said, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me, but I had a huge crush on you in high school."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember you." And then so we went out on a date, and then the rest is history.
Awesome.
So yeah, it was in 2005 when we got together, and then we dated. Obviously, at that time I was working, kind of bouncing back and forth. I was doing work as like a handyman for like a ranch over there next to the Publix
Yeah.
where we were talking about earlier. Did a lot of work there, just like while I was going to school. Then went back to being a security guard at Memorial, and I was working on a degree in international relations, and then
Because you already had experience in that,
Yeah, and
basically.
I was interested in it. I wanted to
Yeah.
do something like that, and then I was really thinking I wanted to go to law school. Was what was kind of my idea was. So I was going to school, and then what I found myself, especially when I went back and was working in security at the hospital. I mean, I was working like 60 hours a week, and it wasn't bad because I could do my work. At the hospital, you could sit there and do your schoolwork and stuff.
Yeah.
But there was a cop there, and he was like, "Dude, why are you spending all this time here? Why don't you just go become a cop? Like you can." I'm like, "Well, I'm thinking I want to go to law school." He's like, "Yeah, you can do it. Dude, you're working 60 hours here. Like if you go to the police department, you only work 40 hours, and you won't be forced to work extra.
Yeah.
And you'll make more money, and it'll help you if you want to be a lawyer one day. It'll help you too." So I'm like, it's not wrong what he's saying.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
let me
yeah.
look into it. And at the time I had heard like it takes like 2 years to become a cop. Like everyone I had talked to, like they're like, yeah, you put in like, it's like a 2-year process to get hired. And at that point, like I was like, you know what? I don't know where I'm going to be 2 years from now, but if school isn't working out the way I want it to, and if, this would be a good backup plan. I'll put in the application.
Yeah.
And so I only put in at Fort Lauderdale. My dad had worked for Fort Lauderdale, not as a cop, but as a code inspector. But I was familiar with Fort Lauderdale. Plus, I thought Fort Lauderdale was cool. It was like the biggest one, and that's where I always went.
Right.
In high school, like that's where we go down to Fort Lauderdale. So I put in my application to Fort Lauderdale, and then I got a call like a week later saying, "Hey, can you come in for I forget what was first."
Usually like a pre-interview or kind of like a hiring.
Oh yeah, it was the interview. Yeah. So I went in like, "Hey, can you come in next week for an interview?" I'm like, "Oh shit, that was fast." So I go in for the interview, pass the interview. They're like, "Hey, can you come back tomorrow for a polygraph?"
Yeah.
I ended up having to take 3 polygraphs because I failed the first one, and I kept hitting like on different things. So, but they got me through it. It was just like a washing machine. I got thrown into it, and like within 3 weeks, I had a call from the chief saying, "Hey, we want to hire you."
Yeah.
So I was like, "Wait a second, this was supposed to be my backup plan." Like I was going to go to school.
I'm
Like,
not ready. I'm not ready.
yeah, yeah. So I'm at that point, I'm like, well, shoot, yeah, all right, I guess, yeah, I'll do it. So yeah, I got hired, but I still had that idea. I wanted to finish at that time I was working my bachelor's. So I got hired. Obviously, I took a break to go to the academy. Came out, went on midnights. So then continued going to school. Like I would work midnights, get off at 7 in the morning, drive up to FAU in Boca, go to class until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Jeez.
Yeah, so that was a rough time, like getting that. But yeah, I ended up finishing my bachelor's, and then working midnights,
Yeah.
District 2 in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's another proving ground that I'm sure you can think of, like, not Iraq or whatever, or the military, but it's midnights is another proving ground where you learn a lot of stuff on midnights, and then sometimes you can take it back.
Yeah,
Or you
absolutely, and it gives you. I think midnights gives you the ability to I don't know, especially as a new cop, you come off really like I don't know, fool yourself, I guess. I don't know. When you first start out, I mean, you're full, like you think you got a chip on your shoulder. I mean, at least I know I did. I know a lot of other cops that do. And I think working midnights gives you that opportunity to kind of, you know, get rid of that, I guess. Like
Yeah.
it lets you make mistakes that not everyone has to see.
Yeah, because there's less eyes,
Yeah.
there's less admin eyes, there's all
Yeah.
kinds of, I mean, on day shift, there's all kinds of supervisors, there's all kinds of detectives, there's all kinds of specialized units that are all working. And then they're all there to judge you because they've got so many more things. You get to do some trial by fire with guys that are of similar
Yeah.
range of
Right.
where
When you come out on
experience
midnights,
levels.
right? When you come out on midnight, like when you go to like days, like you have the guys that have already been through that learning curve, right?
Yeah.
And they're there, and they can be very good to guide you, but also sometimes it helps to just be around a bunch of people that are kind of in the same boat you are in, and you kind of all figure it out together.
And you got a lot of
learn.
downtime where you are sitting around bullshitting. You find an empty parking lot and you kind of circle the wagons and you lean on the cars and you talk some trash. You talk about your history, you talk about a call that you were on, and you can kind of like throw stuff up against the wall and sort of learn. And then hopefully maybe you guys are cool with a supervisor that hangs out too and can kind of be like, nah, guys, you're doing it wrong.
Show you the way,
Or
yeah.
let me kind of steer your ship. And yeah, those are your formative years in law enforcement to really learn that, I think. And I mean, I spent the first 5 years of my career on Charlie shifts, so afternoons, and then on midnights when we switched to the 12-hour shifts. So, because I couldn't touch day shift, to save my life. But afternoons was great for me because it was the most active time. So you're just getting every call imaginable thrown on you to learn. And we just had a good crew of people, all under 5 years, but you had guys like me that were 1 to 2 years. And then you had people that were 3 to 5 years, and we were all sharing experiences and learning and stuff like that. So, big time. So dive unit in Fort Lauderdale is pretty active, I would think.
Yeah.
the Venice of America,
Yeah.
as the patch says. So you got a lot of water. South Florida has a lot of water anyways. So you have cars driving off the road, evidence recovery.
Yeah. So we do. So probably it's a mixed bag between evidence recovery. I got on the dive team about 2 years in, so I did that pretty early on, and it was one of those things that I was always interested in diving, and really interested in it more, not so much from the I don't know, the recreational standpoint, but more the technical standpoint. I just enjoyed that technical aspect of it, especially when you get into police diving. It's not the fun stuff you see. I mean, a lot of time it's zero visibility. You're diving in dry suits, full face mask.
In the dirtiest water imaginable.
It's dirty. I mean, you can't see anything. You're running into God knows what. I mean, even you think about something simple like an old shopping cart, right?
I was picturing
like
that.
An old shopping cart. You got to imagine those are just metal, right? What happens to these metal things when you throw it in this water, especially brackish water? They become rusty spikes. I mean, so when you think about when you can't see anything and you're down there just feeling your way, like there's stuff like that in there. You get tangled in it because you're on a line, but so you have to be cognizant of what you're doing. But yeah, so I got in the dive team. It was a mixed bag of evidence recovery. A lot of times guns are thrown into the water. A lot of body recovery. It's either cars go in and we go recover cars, a lot of that, but then a lot of either drownings or missing persons, that we ended up going to recover. I mean, there's one spot right in downtown Fort Lauderdale on the New River there that is notorious. People go down there, get drunk, and they jump in, and if the tide's ripping through there, it just takes people out. And we've done
They just had that. I think within the last 6 months, I think somebody just went missing because isn't that right near Riverfront?
Yeah, right near
It's
Riverfront.
right
So
near-
we're always getting people there. Like I think I personally have probably pulled 6 or 7 bodies out of right there. You know what I mean?
Because it's got that kind of curve to it where it kind of creates an eddy or like a water spin. Or does that happen there?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know the current just gets ripping through there. And so people think they're going to get drunk, swim across, and then they try to fight the current, because they realize it's going to push them way
You
down.
go over to Pirates Cove or whatever it is,
and-
that
and-
other restaurant.
I mean, the biggest problem is they just try to fight the current. I mean, if they were just to go with the current, I mean, it's going to take them a quarter mile down the way.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get out and walk when you get down there. But that's not what happens. They're drunk. Like, oh, I still want to get to, my goal is to get across right here. So they sit there and fight it. And they tire out and go on.
Yeah, I've kayaked in the Miami River area. We put in at a park in like downtown Miami, and we did this thing like almost out to Bayfront or out to the bay, and it starts to get nasty. It's just so hard to paddle and everything like that because that current, if the current's right, it just gets moving crazy. So I've spoken to an NYPD diver that was on their dive team with stuff that they do, and it's crazy there. He was on like the recovery mission for the U.S. Air Sully flip over plane and stuff like that, and talked about how it moved. The Hudson River moved the freaking plane. Like they're trying to do recovery and everything like that, and they're like the engine and everything like got moved like so far down the river that they had to like secure it so that they could do a proper recovery and stuff.
So this is, I don't know, this maybe not the best story to say, but it is a good story. So shout out to my boy Derek if he listens to this. But so one of my first body recoveries was right there at that New River spot, and Derek and I were always the ones going in. So Derek had gone down, he had found the body, and once you find it, you have to have the support diver come down and bring the body bag. And the current was ripping, and I remember Derek coming over the radio, because we're on radios, we actually have lines that talk to one another. And so Derek's down there, he's like, hey, I found the body, but I've dislodged it, because like I guess when he got near it, it was like lodged under something that was holding it, but now the current was trying to take it. He's like, this thing, I'm going to lose it. It's getting, the current's taking me. You need to get down here now. And so now I'm coming down and I have the body bag, and the body bag is like a sail, right? So I'm trying to keep it in, and I'm trying to follow his line down. It was late, so it was dark out. Like there was no visibility. And I'm taking this line down, and I hear Derek saying, hey, I'm about to lose him. And I go, as I get down, and again, there's like, I mean, maybe 2 to 3 feet of visibility, and I have a flashlight like on my helmet. And as I get down there, I just see Derek, and Derek's like, I don't know, 140 pounds maybe. But I see Derek, and he's cradling this body, like holding on to it, because he's tied off, but obviously the body's not tied off.
Yeah.
And I just see the body kind of floating, and Derek riding the body, like holding on to it for dear life. And it was just, I just remember in that moment, like thinking like, what am I doing? That here I am coming down this thing, zero visibility. I mean, and to see that, that's an image that I think I'll never. And it's one of those things like I'm sitting here laughing about it, and this is why I say it's tough to bring up. But it's one of those things in law enforcement. It's like, look, if the people that was an individual that died, right? So that's not lost on me, right? But I think that in law enforcement, especially, we that's our job, right? Like, yes, that is somebody like, and I would never make light of that situation to the family or whatever, but I think society doesn't necessarily understand that. Look, to me and Derek, that's something we go back and laugh about, because it was like, hey, this is us doing our job, and I watched you riding a dead body down the bottom of a canal. Like that's not a typical thing
Of
And I think
course.
it's hard, and I almost feel guilty now, like kind of
No,
joking about it,
no,
but it's like,
don't feel, you can't feel guilty at all. And the world needs to understand, and yeah, with these podcasts and stuff like that, we put some of this dark humor out, and as a society of first responders, veterans, there's dark humor in everything because it's a part of our therapy. It's part of the way that we have to look at the world, and we become dark because otherwise we'd become crazy because 99% of society has not seen and will never see something like that unless they see it in a movie and they're going to go, that's not real. It's a movie. It doesn't affect me. But for you guys, like, you guys have to look at it a different way. And also, we have to shut off a part of our feelings
yeah, it's just the job,
to
right?
feel for
Yeah, it's just the
that
job at that
person,
point.
that family. And out of the water, everybody's there. We're respectful. We're on camera and stuff like that. But in your mind, to be able to look at that and be like, this is not something I ever expected that I would see in my life. And having the experience in life that you'd already had, and then to see that, and well, that's a new one, you know. And
Exactly.
and we say it so many times now on like social media, and you see it on TV, you know, like, I didn't have that on my bingo card. Like, that's the phrase now. And essentially back then you would have probably said that. It wasn't on my bingo card to see him, but he was doing his job and he was doing what he was supposed to do. He was holding on to that body, you know, so that you guys could recover it, because God knows what would happen to it if it took off,
Yeah.
you know, down the river, you know, and kept going, and could have gotten destroyed, you know,
Yeah.
could have gotten ripped apart. And then you guys are doing even more recovery. And then it's even worse for the family. So, tragic events, but unfortunately we have to make light of them just to be able to live with them, in our life, you know. So it is what it is. Sorry if anybody gets offended, but I highly doubt anybody that watches this show gets offended by that kind of stuff. And I don't think I'm going to clip it into a reel. Um, but so you work through that, and then coming into, we don't need to take a break for a little while, but you know, you come off patrol, and do you want to get into CID or detective division, for those not on the terms, the detective division to investigate murders, homicides, robberies? Like, what are you looking to do?
Yeah. So, I mean, just like I think most cops, I think being a detective is kind of like the cool thing, right? I think everyone
Yeah.
kind of has that idea of what it is to be a detective. So, I definitely wanted to do that. And I was fortunate enough that I got the opportunity to go to our general duty unit. That's where I was serving with Dustin, one of the guys you spoke
Yeah.
with. He actually was the one that trained me when I came in. I was his partner, and working the night shift as a general duty detective. Where
Right. I think I texted you after I talked to Dustin, and was like, oh, I just had Dustin on the podcast. And yeah.
yeah, so that's an incredible experience, because especially as a new detective, it's like you get exposed to everything, because it's any in custodies. So any felony in custody, you're doing the interview, right? The interrogation. So you do more interrogations than you'll ever do in any other, whether homicide, whatever. Like, I don't care what other role you do as a detective on that general duty unit. We were doing 4 or 5, sometimes 6, 7 interrogations a week, you know, in a 4-day work week. Because every time a burglar gets arrested, like, you're the one that goes and does the interrogation on them if it wasn't in custody. And then if it was like a very, if it was a murder, like a rape or something like that, we would call out the detective. But generally, we were the first one on scene for all that stuff. But during that time, I think I got to experience, and maybe got a little jaded on what I thought was the best, or where I wanted to be as a detective. Because one thing you really see pretty quickly is that 90% of the robberies that you're dealing with aren't really robberies like you think. Like, when the news media puts out a robbery, it's like, oh, this little old lady got robbed by this, big bad
Yeah.
wolf, right? Most of the time, 90% of them was one drug dealer ripping off another drug dealer, or one asshole ripping off. Like, your victim today is going to be your suspect next week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're like, man, why am I spending so much time and effort on this when it's like you are in this world, and you are contributing to the reason why you're here. And again, it's not all of them, but there was enough of them that, like, I'd say 90% of it is just like, it's
Yeah. It's
bullshit.
just drama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing with some of the special victim stuff. And, it was like a lot of those were like fail to pays. Like, it was like a prostitution fail to pay. And it's like, man, like, you didn't get paid for what you want. And again, totally not to broadcast that like generally, but there was a lot of that.
And there's enough to affect you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, why put so much effort into that when it's not the thing that you really think it is, right? And one thing I did see was like when it came to fraud, and I was always kind of interested in fraud from the perspective of it changes, right? For one, the victims, even if they're sometimes aloof, they're generally they generally are real victims. They're not like people that are going committing crimes next week, right? Um, and then additionally, I mean, how many ways are there to hit someone over the head with a baseball bat, right? There's only a couple ways to do that. When it came to fraud and the white collar stuff, it was like that stuff is ever changing. So it's like the puzzle solver in me like was so interested in it because I would see these new trends and be like, man, how in the hell did they do that? And that's where I kind of got the bug with that. And I really wanted to go do economic crimes. I decided while I was on general duty, if I wanted to pursue that path, I decided to go after my master's degree in forensic accounting. I had finished my bachelor's degree by that time, and I had switched from international relations. I switched it to public safety administration just because I figured, okay, this is my path now. So
Yeah.
I got my bachelor's in public safety administration. Then I started doing the program for the master's of forensic accounting. So about 6 months into that program, it was a 3-year program. About 6 months into it, I ended up getting the opportunity to go to the economic crimes unit. And so then I got to finally leave midnights
Yeah.
because I had been on midnights for 5 years in patrol and then 2 years in general duty. And then I went to the economic crimes unit where I spent the rest of my career.
Dude, and here's one of my, you say how many ways is there to hit somebody with a baseball bat or snatch and grab a purse or whatever. One of the things that I saw in my career, having gone from patrol where from 2005 to 2010, or well, 2006 to 11, we were setting up perimeters, chasing bad guys, hopping fences, like doing that stuff, like doing that work, what people think of police work. Then I went into the schools and I was there for 6 to 7 years. And then I went into community policing and PIO. So I was off the road, like out of sight, trying to stay tapped in because I understand that it's the background or the backbone of a city's law enforcement. But when I got back to the road towards the end of my career, I noticed that the evolution, because I'd had such a long period of time not seeing it on a call basis, was that it had gone from us needing to set up perimeters for everybody. And now, granted, Fort Lauderdale, you may be able to say different, and you didn't go back to patrol, but they may not be setting up perimeters as often as they were like when we first started. And because the bad guys, even the burglars, the guys who we would get the call from the neighbor saying, I just saw 2 shoes slink into a window or climb into a jalousie window or something like that to do a burglary. They're not doing that. They're part of fraud rings. They're the foot soldiers, the boots on the ground that are making the connections or doing the little thefts sometimes to get the credit cards or whatever to spin fraud. Whereas before they were just, breaking into houses to steal jewelry or items of value to pawn or sell, like PlayStations and stuff like that. But like all those calls when I was at the beginning of my career, handling burglaries and robberies and thefts, turned into all those calls. If I had like 15 a week, there was 15 fraud reports. The 53s if you're in Broward County, the fraud reports, or the well, they didn't get anything from you, and then there was probably 25 more where you're like, well, be glad you're not a victim. They didn't get anything from you, but thanks for calling us to let us know that somebody tried to commit a scam on you or whatever. So I felt like people were going from that. So can you affirm that for me and say that, yeah, those
Absolutely. So
basic gang member thugs
absolutely
are now doing that too?
Absolutely. So it's much higher return, much lower risk.
Yeah,
Right?
you're not getting bit, you're not getting shot, you're not getting beat up. Like,
Yeah. And I mean, you can even look at it. I did this a while back, but I mean, so you can look at like if you look at even like hip hop culture and like if you look at the music, right?
Mhm.
And I did this a while back because I saw this trend, right? And if you look in like the 90s, like what was all of that, urban culture about? It was about slinging drugs, right? Slinging
Mm-hmm.
dope. And then if you started to see like in the 2000s, you started to hear a lot more of like that culture shift to committing fraud. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's in the songs. And it's because there was this cultural like realization like, hey, we can make a lot of money doing this. And so a lot of that same like gang culture, drug culture, it really shifted into fraud culture. And you could see that even from the perspective of when we make arrests, right? Like we would make arrests on fraud and see their history. They have like robbery history, drug history, and they're all doing fraud now,
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely 100%. Um, and it has continued to evolve, and there's every kind of different um, sect, I guess, has their own kind of fraud specialties. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely got into it a bit, and it kind of helped that one of our sergeants that came back to the road was an economics crime detective while he was a detective. So he sort of like encouraged me to do it, and he laughed because like I had a Regions Bank in my zone, and it's like Regions Bank just gets killed. It seems I've talked to some people and they said there's something about Regions Bank that they're in that they're in some sort of a network where it's like fraud just happens in their bank. And so I was in there a lot, and one time we got the fraudsters there. So it was like Sarge like looked at me and he's like, we got to do something with these ghosts, like, because you as a patrolman you're always just taking the after report, like the end. And I was like, all right, well, we gotta crack open the book and really work on what we can charge them with. And it may have been loose, and obviously it was towards the end of my career, so I don't know if I'll ever see it because I don't know if I'll ever get subpoenas on it. But and the Broward State attorney doesn't necessarily always want to charge with this kind of stuff. But, I saw it, and it was a fraud through South Dakota or something like that. And they created some business down here, they said, and they were buying security equipment. It was ridiculous. And it was just like, it was fun talking to them and really trying to get them. They get their word salad going towards you, and you start researching what they're saying and everything like that. And then you go back in and talk to them, and they kind of forgot their story.
Yeah.
And it's all a story. It's all a lie, and it's a lie. And you just have to prove that, and you have to prove it through documentation.
Yeah.
And they're just
The biggest,
amazing.
I think the biggest hurdle when it comes to fraud stuff, and it's there, you can manufacture a fraud scheme that has um, a prearranged like explanation, right? Like, so like when you're on the scene, especially as a detective, as an officer on the scene, right? You don't have the luxury of all of the research capabilities, like in time to go back and like decipher everything, especially if you're trying to make a call right there on the spot. But they can engineer these fraud schemes to where they have a plausible explanation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we let them off on that plausible explanation too many times without doing our research in it, then that becomes the go-to playbook. And now
Mm-hmm.
every single time. So like, as an example, like check fraud will never go away, but it's just one of those things. That's kind of where patrol sees fraud. And like even when I was on the road, like I thought, oh, that's what fraud detectives do. Check fraud is really such a small part of what the fraud units do. It's actually I hated the check fraud cases because all you ever get is the mule, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
this is the problem in law enforcement as well, is like you're always trying to go after the symptom and not really, you don't have the manpower and the time to go after the underlying cause. So when it comes to those check fraud rings, who's the person walking in like
Yeah.
to cash a check? They're nobody. They're an absolute nobody. They're either a homeless person or a drug addict they picked up off the street. They dress them up and they send them in to go cash a check. And they're giving them an out story like, oh yeah, I got hired to do work for this guy and he paid me with a check. Well, if you're a legitimate like third party person that gets a stolen check, right? Like if I go and cut someone's lawn and they pay me with a bad check, it's not my fault they gave me a stolen check, right? And so you can see how that's understandable. So as law enforcement, we don't want to be arresting the true guy that's out doing
Yeah.
work and got screwed over
Is
by
kind of a
somebody.
victim. They're a
Yeah.
form of victim.
You don't want to arrest him for passing a bad check, but they know that too, but they're going to give him that story. But that's why, you get into, okay, well, who did you do work for? And, you have to answer all those questions. But really the goal is to get to that guy and be like, okay, no, who really gave you that check? And that's what we always try to do when we call them mules, right? So when we get those mules at the bank or whatever, we go talk to them. Our whole goal was, listen, I know you're not behind this. Like, you're going to go down for it if you don't want to talk to me, because look, I know this is a stolen check. So either you're going to talk to me and let's get to the root of this. Cause I don't want you. I want the guy that's handling you. I want to know, like, you're being victimized by this guy, because guess what? How much money? I know you out of that $2,000 check you cashed, I know you're only getting like $150. Who's getting the rest of the money? And I think the most frustrating thing, bar none, about being a detective is that's a worthwhile case to work. But guess what? That takes time.
Yeah.
And does
because
the agency
there's one going on right now.
Yeah.
Like, you're in the room talking to that guy. There's one or two more going on right now.
And so from an agency's perspective, from a CompStat perspective, like, what does the agency care about? We just want to see arrests. Like, you know what I mean? So they don't necessarily, especially with fraud, it doesn't have that status as a primary crime, right?
And it's not a glorious thing, because society that watches the news is like, oh, great, Fort Lauderdale set up a perimeter and bit a burglar. Great, thanks.
Yeah.
You know,
right. And so it's like,
my neighborhood's safer.
There could be so much work done proactively to take down these actual rings, which ultimately they really are victimizing these mules, because these mules are drug addicted, they're homeless. Like, look, they're making the decision to do what they're going to do. So I'm not saying that they're innocent parties, but they're victims of circumstance in a lot of cases. And if we could get to the root cause, the people that are making all the money, that the guys that you see on Instagram flashing hundreds and hundreds, right? Those guys are never in the bank cashing a check, right? Those are not the guys. Those are the guys I want to arrest. Those are the guys I want to go after. But in order to do that, you have to work fraud cases almost like drug cases of the 90s, right? You have to think of them as like the street level guy, and then build it up to get to higher, because they're all organized crime. Even if it's a couple of idiots, right? Still organized, because even though these couple of idiots are at the top of it and they're employing a bunch of drug addicts and whatever downstream, it's still organized crime. And it's not like a mafia, but in some cases it is, but it runs the gambit. And the only way you're ever going to know is if you actually have the time and the resources to dive into that and really get to the bottom of that structure.
Yeah, I mean, we saw, like, in the early 2000s, especially in my city, with the large narcotics units that were just working 24/7, basically flipping, rolling, doing all this kind of stuff. You got to do the same exact kind of thing with that, because there's multi-tiers. You have your mules, you have your middlemen, sometimes a couple middlemen that everybody's getting little pieces of the pie as it goes up to that guy that's flashing the money.
Right.
And,
so I look at it this way: arresting the mule that cashes the bad check in the bank is the equivalent of arresting the homeless guy with a crack pipe in the park.
Yeah.
Like, you think you're solving a problem by arresting the guy with the crack pipe in the park? No, you're not solving anything. It might look good on your stats, say, oh yeah, I got X amount of arrests. You're not solving a problem.
Yeah. You're actually the homeless guy with a crack pipe in a park, for that analogy, might be even better, because you're cleaning up the park at least for 5 hours while the homeless guy is off the streets, or a couple hours, whereas the homeless guy that walked into a bank, like, what are you doing? Like, and then the other problem is the city, people look at it and go, well, a lot of times it's insured, or the credit card company is the victim, really, or ends up being the victim, because, I pay with everything with a credit card because I don't want anybody touching my checking account, because I saw so many times where checking accounts got drained. But if somebody logs into my Uber Eats account and charges up $150 for Chinese food, happened, it's just my credit card company that I deal with, and I'm not out my mortgage payment or my rent payment or my car payment, then it's like, oh crap, now I got to call the bank and tell them this and this and that. And it's like so much for the victim to have to deal with. Meanwhile, these guys are eating $150 worth of Chinese food just because they hacked my Uber Eats account or got into my account somehow through something. So crazy. All right. Let's take a quick break. I'll check the cameras, and then we'll be right back, and we're going to talk some more fraud stuff, and then kind of this crypto world and this crazy world that we live in now, with even bigger crimes that you look at now. So we'll be back. Yo, what's up, everybody? I want to let you know I have a new website format. Same website, donutshoppodcast.com. but this time I'm running it through Shopify. Make it much easier to purchase items because aside from the hats that I have up there, Donut Shop Podcast, PVC hats, the blue line snapback, laser mesh, nice and clean on the inside, comfy hats. I have some other swag, t-shirts, can koozies, just some other stuff that I put up there. I'm running the website through Shopify, and so it'll make it real easy for you guys to go on and purchase some stuff and support the show. So thanks for tuning in and following the show, and don't forget donutshoppodcast.com. Thanks. What's in the cup? Guys, what's in my cup? Blackout Coffee Company. We joined up with them. I've been drinking it and I enjoy it, and I think you may enjoy it as well. So you can go over to our website and click the link, or you can just go to their website, blackoutcoffee.com, and use our coupon code to get 10% off. The code is DSP10. So go over, check it out. All right, we're back from break. All right, so coming in towards, I mean, when did you in your fraud investigations time really start to get into the weeds, like the deep dark stuff, and then this cryptocurrency? I mean, I barely know anything about any of that stuff nowadays, and I know it's just that's a ever evolving type. You know, there's a lot of room for fraud, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. So, you know, there's been so many different iterations and different things. Like, and it's kind of like through my career, I kind of became I kind of specialized, honed in on, you know, whatever thing caught my interest at the time, which was great. You know, at least I had that kind of freedom in my agency where I had the trust where, like, okay, you know, maybe I'm not turning the numbers over like I was, but it's because I'm trying to figure something out, right? And I had the freedom to do that, right? So, because a lot of times, like, whether it be like we started getting a lot of like deed fraud and mortgage fraud, trying to figure all that out. And you basically, one of the thing about working economic crimes is you get like industry specific frauds, you know what I mean? And as a detective, you have to, it's not like just, it's not like something you've done before. You have to learn the industry.
Right. A robbery is a robbery, but we're not mortgage brokers. Not all of us.
Exactly.
Some of us are.
Right. And you have to get into and like speak with these, you have to learn the mortgage industry. What is normal practice and how is this different and how are they doing this? Right. So, you know, so it ran the gambit. Like, obviously, like having my degree in forensic accounting helped a lot when it came to some of the traditional embezzlements. Like, I had some big cases involving CPAs that were basically cooking the books and like concealing their thefts on the books, you know what I mean? Which that is your more traditional white collar stuff. I enjoyed that, but that gets extremely tedious.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we got into a lot of the mortgage fraud stuff. Then business email compromise came around. And I remember the first time, like, a lot of people know what business email compromise is now. That's where you get, you know, someone fished your email and you get like a fake email.
That's what my case at Regions Bank really was. Yeah. That's where it started.
So the first time, and it's so funny because especially in South Florida, I think, especially if you're in an ECU unit in South Florida, if you have the freedom to try to like dive into some of this stuff, you will be on the front and leading edge of any of this stuff. So like that happened with business email compromise. Like we got the first one we got, and I mean, this was probably going back to like 2014 or something, but it was, they said, you know, someone got into my email and they substituted it for this. And then I wired the money. Yep. And it's like, oh, this sounds like something out of like a movie. Like, I don't believe that. Like, you probably, there's something else to this story, right? You're skeptical of it. Like maybe someone, you know. No, but then you end up getting into it and you realize, okay, no, that this is the new like fraud type. Like, this is what they're doing. So I got the opportunity to work some of those. And the interesting thing about those, I won't go too much on a side tangent, but like, we hardly ever in those business email compromise cases, you're hardly ever able to actually get your hands on somebody. We had just gotten lucky in one case where they were coming in to cash out. It was a guy out of Chicago, was cashing out in a bank here in Fort Lauderdale. And the bank investigator who we knew, like, and that's the other great thing about working in ECU, anyone that's in the economic crimes unit, like, it's so important to like get out and make connections, like with groups. Like, I was always a member of the IAFCI, the International Association of Financial Crimes Investigators, but you end up knowing the bank investigators.
Right.
So in this case, the bank investigator knew me and my partner, Alex, like called us up like, hey, we think something's funny. Like this guy just got a deposit for like $100,000. He says it's for a car that he has to take out the money now. So we're like, well, let's go talk to him, because it was just enough. Like it was suspicious. So we went and talked to that guy, got him in the interview room. We had enough. We were able to prove some of his stories were kind of false. So we had enough to hold him. But then he gave us this whole story about how he was on a visa from somewhere in Africa. I forget where. And he had a passport from there. And we were buying this whole story. When we ended up going out and finding his car, doing a search warrant on his car, ended up finding his real ID. The passport was fake. Like the whole story was fake.
Wow.
But we were able to, it was interesting because we were able to decipher this crime that we had been working from one end, right? Like from the victim side where we could never really get to the other side of it. And then what's so interesting about having access as a police officer is then you get to actually find the other side of it and you get to work it from that side. I'm actually talking to the guy that's doing this. And if you're able to break them down and you actually end up start hearing the whole story, you kind of start getting able to put those pieces together.
Yeah.
So we got to do a lot of business email compromise stuff when it first started, then synthetic identities. I remember the first time we had a guy in, they used to call them CPNs, credit privacy numbers. And now it's what we would know as synthetic identities, but no one really knew what they were at the time. And we had this guy in the office, or we arrested him. And it was because he was buying like an ATV basically, using a social security number, his name and everything. And the credit report came back with his name. But then we're like, wait a second, like we run his DL and there's a different social security number. So we're like, we see he's using a new social security number, but it's still his name. So is it identity theft? It's still his name. And like trying to figure that all out. And we had him in the interview room and he's like, no, I didn't steal anyone's ID. That was just my CPN. And we're like, oh, okay. And like me and my partner kind of walk out and like, dude, what the hell is a CPN?
Yeah.
So we go straight to Google and we're trying to figure it out. And, we're able to get to the bottom of it and realize, okay, it's a synthetic identity, but this is before that term even existed.
Well, what is a synthetic identity?
Oh, so basically synthetic identity is where you take, it gets the whole process, the whole way our credit system is built is they attach your social security number to your credit, right? But that's not what your social security number was really originally designed for. So these third-party companies that are using that social security number as an identifier, they don't speak with the Social Security Administration. So like they don't vet that to make sure that really is your social security number. So what they would do is they would create a new social security number. It's fake. It's not even a real social security number. It's never been issued by the Social Security Administration. But then they would game the system so that the third-party companies would start to build a credit profile on you. So now you could use your name, your date of birth, and a fake social security number, but actually build up a credit profile.
Right. Just like some people are trying to build their 16-year-old's credit,
That's what it is.
And they're able to, through like a smaller bank, open up a checking account, and then they kind of do some transactions. Yeah. Okay.
So that's what they would do. And they would cash out, they would get cars and stuff, and they would get loans and they would cash out. And it's all theft because
full fake social security numbers that really don't come back to them.
Doesn't come back to them.
Wow.
So basically it gives no recourse to the credit provider. There's no one they can go after because what are they going to do? They're going to burn a credit profile on someone that doesn't exist really. Yeah. Because even though they may be using their real name, their real date of birth, in the eyes of the credit profile, it's a different person, right? So that was, like a new iteration. And then, we saw it go into crypto. And I think I got my first crypto case in 2017. I was like, what is this? I had been familiar with crypto just because I had a friend that was into it, but I had some interest in it, but I'd never worked with it professionally. Had my first case, and this was at this time, it wasn't like all the fraud. The fraud wasn't really occurring in crypto. It was really more traditional theft. It was like someone that knew someone that had crypto and got into was able to steal their.
Yeah, crypto. just a hack kind of or a password.
Yeah, just stealing someone's password basically. And that was the case in this one. It was like these brothers, and I mean, they had like big money. I think at the time it was like $300,000 in Bitcoin. And this was in 2017. So God knows how much money that's worth now, but they had trusted somebody to set up a wallet for them. And then that person obviously maintained those
credentials.
And got in and took the money. And so it was fortunate for us because I at least got to get exposed to it. I mean, and then we didn't really see it take off probably until 2019. And in 2019, really in 2020, when COVID hit, I think that's where it really blew up. And then you start to see it become international, and you had these international organizations that really started up out of Southeast Asia and really backed by Chinese organized crime. And these are like industrial scale scam centers. They are recruiting people from all around the world to come in under the guise of some kind of IT work. They take their passports, basically lock them in these facilities that are that house thousands of these workers, and they have to go on and basically scam Americans all day. And the reason that it's shifted so much, or why cryptocurrency has become such a driver for that, is that all throughout time, all the frauds, the scams are always the same, right? The actual way the scam works is generally the same. The only thing that differs is how do you move the money. And so America has all the money. That's why the entire world is going after America for the money. But how do you get money out of America? So if you do it through the traditional financial system, there is this one choke point. To get wires overseas, you have to go through the Fed, right? So even though we can wire money between our individual banks, when it goes overseas, it has to go through a specific route from the U.S. bank to another bank for that country, right? And then it gets distributed to the local banks from there. So that becomes like a pathway where it can get cut off. And so a lot of the banks, the traditional banks, have gotten very good about identifying these and putting a hold on these wires and being able to recall those wires. So what do? They started employing a network of mules. They'll get these people to open up bank accounts. They'll try to break down, like if it's $1 million theft, they try to break it down to, I'll send it to 2 mules, 500,000 each. Then I'll have those 2 mules send it to 2 mules, 250 each. They'll get it down to like it's 50 grand or less, right? Because that starts to minimize the flags that go off when they try to move the money out. And it also it doesn't put all their eggs in one basket. If one of them or 2 of them get grabbed by the police, then okay, they still get some of it overseas.
Just like drug dealers coming across the border and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You get.
So it's the same thing, and that's how they were doing it on the traditional financial system, and they still do it that way. But it became so much easier with crypto, because once you can move something into crypto, it's instantaneously wherever they have access to it, wherever those private keys are, wherever that person, there's no intermediary, right? So crypto is completely decentralized. At least it's in its most native form is decentralized. So it restricts that ability. So you see these overseas fraud rings driving people to crypto, and especially with the advent of the crypto ATMs.
Right.
We've
seen so many videos on social media of the elderly just feeding money into crypto machines.
And then it's instantly gone. Like the second it goes there, that they can access that money from anywhere. So that has been such a huge driver, and it's made it to where they no longer have to employ in order to do the other thing I was telling you about, these mule networks, they have to have handlers for these mules. They have to have backstories. There's usually a romantic component, or there's a work from home job component. They have to have the story they sell these mules, because a lot of these mules aren't going to be witting mules. Some of them are witting mules. Some of them do it wittingly and they get paid for it, right? Some of them aren't, though. And they have them create businesses and actually go out and file the paperwork, create a business. They have this whole backstory, to create these things.
But there's a lot of hands in the pot. There's a lot of moving parts. So it takes a lot more organization. So I've only seen negative stories, obviously, about these crypto ATMs. And a lot of times you find them in, stop and robs, and stuff like that. Like, how is that even legal? Or, I mean, what's the normal way or the lawful way that you're supposed to be using that compared to this, fraudulent way of doing it?
So this is like a hot button issue. And this is where it comes down on, I guess, more theoretical on what you think government's role is, right? So what is the legitimate use for a crypto ATM? There really isn't one, right? Yeah. Because look, you could argue, the legitimate use is I want crypto and I want to get crypto in an easy way. It is a super easy way to get crypto, right? Like you don't have to do this whole onboarding process. You do have to do some KYC, like know your customer stuff at the terminal. But by and large, it's an easy way to turn cash into crypto. They charge you 30% though.
Yeah.
Like it's like 20 to 30%. So who in their right mind is just going to give away,
Yeah.
20 or 30%, right? There's no legitimate reason to do that when you could go get a Coinbase account or go through the more like legitimate means to get crypto. Sure, it's a little bit more cumbersome. Certainly worth 30% of your money, right? So,
but and also not easy for the senior citizens that maybe are thinking or got sold on a bill of goods by a scammer or something like that. Oh, getting into crypto, this is a great idea. That you've got to at least educate yourself when you're getting into the crypto trading type idea.
yeah. So the way that they typically go, and a lot of the elderly, when they're doing it, they don't know what crypto is, right?
Yeah.
And one of the sales pitches or the ideas behind it is like, this is your bank account has been compromised. You cannot trust anyone at the bank because look, we're with whoever, you name it. We're either with the super secret like investigative arm of Bank of America, or we're with the FBI, and we're doing an investigation on your branch, and your branch has been compromised. So you can't go there and talk to these people. But don't worry, we don't want to blow our investigation. We don't want you to blow our investigation either. We want you to work with us. But in order to keep you safe, we're just going to need you to take that money out. We're going to be monitoring. We'll be in the branch. We'll be seeing when you take that money out, and we're monitoring that branch employee. And so as soon as you get that money out, that they were going to steal your money or whatever, your credentials were compromised. Once you get that money out, we don't want you to hold on. We want to keep it safe. So we have a special deposit thing.
This is where we want you to put it
at the 7-Eleven, right? Like
fucking stop and rob
and just go sit there for an hour and feed these $100 bills into it. And it only takes 10,000 at a time. So after you leave that one, now go to this other one in this other shady part of town. And so, they convinced them to do that. So when it comes to like the legitimate uses, look, I don't think anyone really is, I don't think people are using crypto ATMs that are, let's face it, if you know anything about crypto, if you're a crypto enthusiast, you're not going to throw 30% of your money away to get into crypto. So who else is using it? I mean, you could potentially be using it for things what are you willing to pay 20 to 30% premium on, right? Money laundering is 20 to 30% premium. If you're buying CSAM or like child exploitation material, like you're willing to pay like a premium on that. So that like
strip club ATMs.
Yeah, there you go. So like you can see how it serves that market. Now, should they be illegal? I don't know. Like, I don't see a use for them, but I'm not in the business of telling the government what should be legal, what should not.
It's also a free will thing that we can't prevent someone from going in. I mean, granted, the government prevents us from buying the original Four Loko and stuff like that, but there's things like that. So society is not telling the person to go use that ATM, but where's the government draw the line on how far we let people fuck themselves over?
Exactly. How much of Big Brother should government be? I guess.
I mean, we've got speed limits because we know that going beyond 45 miles an hour out here on Griffin Road is not safe.
Yeah.
So the government can tell you that. Why can't the government say, listen, there's about a 10% lawful use of this crypto machine, and we're not using those anymore. We're not allowing it.
And look, I would not be one to die on that hill. If the government comes out and says, hey, we've outlined these, I'd be like, all right, cool. Like, I understand why. You know what I mean?
I think the way around that would be, so say like a city of Fort Lauderdale, because I'm only thinking of that one spot when I drive to like Riverside Market, and there's that corner store just south of Broward that is right there. And they say crypto machine and stuff like that. And that's right where it's happening. And it's just that a city's got to put in an ordinance that says these machines aren't allowable in the city. Just like you can't have slot machines.
Yeah. I mean, and you've seen some
the same sort of thing.
Yeah,
like you can't have slots.
Yeah. Some jurisdictions are doing that as well. But if you think about it from a city perspective, so I can tell you this. So one of my last cases I did before I retired, I got a $2 million forfeiture for the city. And actually the city ended up with like $1 million. The state ended up with $1 million and the city $1 million. And we got like 600,000 back to victims. But the way that it started, and I say this because this is kind of my counter argument to doing this as a city by city basis, because I don't think it works. We had an individual put $30,000 into a crypto ATM in the city of Fort Lauderdale. She was a Plantation resident. She filed a report with Plantation. Plantation doesn't investigate crypto, like many agencies don't investigate crypto. I happened to find it looking at IC3, the Internet Crime Complaint Center, because I would do a lot of research on that, and I would see, I'm like, oh, this lady lost $30,000. the ATM is in the city of Fort Lauderdale. So I'm like, I can grab jurisdiction. And I actually, before I even contacted her, I kind of went on and looked at it to see, is it a worthy case? Is there something good there? And I see that it's dumping into bigger wallets, because the way it always works is with these crypto scams is you'll have the victim facing wallet, and then they will undoubtedly move into like what I call like a hub wallet, and you'll have other victims' money moving into that, because it's all under this organized scheme, right? And it's under common enterprise and control under this criminal enterprise. So you will see it consolidate and build and build and build. So that $30,000 that she ended up putting in, within a couple hops, I'm already tracing $1 million. And I'm like, oh, these are other victims. And I ended up being able to freeze over 2 million. It was like 2.3 million or something like that. And then I was able to identify like $600,000 from other victims. Tried as best I could to try to identify other victims, but there's only so much you can do to identify the victims, especially when it's going through bridges and things like that. And there's also just a time constraint for how much time you can spend on it to try to identify it. So at the end of the day, we were able to seize 2.3 million and put it in for forfeiture. And the city of Fort Lauderdale ended up getting up $900,000, which now is creating their dedicated crypto unit with 2 officers. You know what I mean? So the alternative is, even though that ultimately that was a lot of that originated from victim money, we tried to identify the victim money, just not gonna be able to identify it at all. The only alternative was either you pursue the forfeiture, in which case the city gets to use it for assisting new victims.
Yeah.
Or you can't take it at all, because it wouldn't have justified under the seizures. The only way to get legal title of that money would through the forfeiture process. Mm-hmm. So it was either give the money back to the bad guys, or no, we pursue the forfeiture process, and at least it goes to help.
Yeah,
it
goes towards crime prevention. Yeah. It goes towards tchotchkes and stuff. The unit that I used to work in.
Yeah, but the reason I bring it up is because now if Fort Lauderdale had outlawed those ATMs, they would have just gone to Plantation to use the ATM. Else. And at least because they came to Fort Lauderdale, we have the ability to respond to it and investigate that case. So if it's just pushing the problem someplace else, unless you come up with statewide policy or something like that.
Right. Yeah. It'd have to be a statewide thing. So, okay. Good point. So we got to spend some time on the Block Audit, or on your company, and kind of like what you do now. So you retired. You talked about it, or we talked about it before the show. You retired. I said you had 18 years on the books, but thankfully to the military, you were able to buy back time. So for any of you that were worried that he's not going to get a proper pension from the city of Fort Lauderdale, he did.
Yep.
Thanks to the military.
Yep.
So always keep that in the back of your mind, to the vets out there, on what you can do for that. You may need to spend less time on the job.
Yep.
So did you see the opportunity, instead of saying, oh, well, instead of doing 22 years on the books with Fort Lauderdale, I'm going to do 27 years on the books. I love this job. I'm going to keep doing it. Like, where do you get that transfer in your mind?
Yeah. So it actually been a long time coming, only from the perspective of, I had got into this crypto world, and it had become my passion. Like, this is what I wanted to do. I had multiple opportunities to go to some federal task forces, and that was the only thing I had left in my checkbox, like on my bingo card, right? Like, I want to go serve on a federal task force. I want to work some international cases that have like real
effect on the world.
Yeah. Best way to do that is get on the task forces.
That can also change policy, change policy, or bring to light the way that some of these schemes are really going, because you have the power of the federal government versus just you in Fort Lauderdale.
And so it had originally started with, we had 2 guys at the Secret Service Task Force, and they were leaving, and they're like, hey, we can put you on the Secret Service Task Force. And it wasn't crypto dedicated or anything, but it was like, all right, I can get my foot in there. And so I was told I was getting that. And then we didn't have the manpower to send me over there. Like, oh, just wait another 6 months and we'll get you over there. Okay. Well, like a year and a half goes by.
Yeah.
And I'm still not there. So I was a little bit all right, well, there goes that opportunity. Then I really started taking off with the crypto stuff, having a lot of success. I ended up starting working with the FBI. I would go have meetings with the FBI office with their squad over there, because they were trying to figure out what we were doing, because we were having success. And they're like, we're kind of comparing notes. And I'm sitting down with the DOJ attorneys and actually talking policy stuff with them. And they're wanting my insight because of, the experience that I've been having. And I'm like, man, this is awesome. I'm actually talking with people that are going to change and affect policy. And then that rolled into the IRS was doing a dedicated crypto money laundering like task force. Like their only job was going to be to like seize crypto. I'm like, this is awesome. So they actually sought me out and like, hey, we want you to come on this task
Yeah.
force. And they offered us the world. It was a full-time task force. They said, if you can't come full-time, we'll even let you come part-time, but we'll still give you all the benefits of full-time. Like they gave the world, and the agency's like, well, we don't have the manpower. We don't have the manpower.
Yeah.
And actually at one point in there, I sat down with my captain. I'm like, hey, listen, like it's been like 2.5 years now. I've been strung along that I'm going to get an opportunity to go to a task force. I'm like, I feel like my professional development, like that's where I want to go. I feel like I'm kind of stagnant, and I feel like that's the next step for me. And I'm like, this is not an ultimatum at all. I want to communicate how I feel to you. I have potentially some opportunities on the private sector. If I don't feel like I'm going to get to where I want to be here, I'm probably going to end up taking those opportunities. So no, we're going to get you in. So I'm like, all right. So like another 6 months goes by. The IRS thing, they're like, no, they weren't going to let me do the IRS thing. But then the FBI, the guys I've been working with over there, like reach out to me like, hey, we're going to start a new task force. We want you to come over to it. So he ends up talking to my major, like the FBI guy, like trying to recruit me over there. And they're like, oh, like I just never hear anything back. Like, it's like, it just goes and dies. And I'm kind of sitting there like, what's happening with this? I have the FBI calling me, hey, have you heard anything? I'm like, no, have you heard anything? Because you talked to my major, like what? And it kind of just dies. Like it's like it got put on a memo someplace and went to die. And then I was kind of sick of that because it was like 4 years of me like being told I was going to get to go do something like I really want to do.
Yeah.
And it was more for my professional development. And it just wasn't happening. And then I started to get traction and see opportunities on the private sector. We had started the Block Audit. So the Block Audit is we started, me and my partner, Alex, while we were both detectives, figuring all this crypto stuff out, like in 2017, 18. And we started getting all of these different shortcuts, like a browser in our browser, like our shortcuts in our browser, like, hey, this site's good for that, or that site's good for this. And we couldn't keep track of them anymore. So we're like, let's put these all on a link website and that we can use. And then if other detectives out there like want to work crypto, like, hey, we can just send them to our website. And we kind of set up our website as a self-help, like go-to for anyone that wanted to learn how to do crypto, using open source tools, because at the time, I mean, the commercial tools were unheard of. They're so expensive. And so we started that. That kind of rolled into like City of Miami, started working with them because they needed help. And they're like, hey, can you teach us a course? It's like, well, we don't really have a course, but like, all right, we'll do it.
Let's make one.
We'll put one together. So we put together a course, the Crypto Investigations Academy. And now we've been teaching that for the last 1.5 years. It's a week long. And that rolled into the IAFCI, International Association of Financial Crimes Investigators. I pitched them a year ago. I'm like, hey, like you guys already have certifications in like white collar investigations and cyber investigations. Really, you should get something specific for a crypto investigation, like a certification, because not only is there the need for it, but also to have a certification, because there are certifications out there that are very worthwhile. But I think what was missing in the industry was a certification that came with an ethical component and a continuing education component, because crypto changes so quickly. It's like, if you're going to tout yourself as being certified, well, I got certified in, and I won't name the names, but I've got certifications in crypto certifications that I got 2 years ago. And 10 years from now, I can still say that I have that certification, because there is no continuing education requirement. There's no ethical requirement. And one of the things we were seeing a lot is these third-party tracing companies were coming in and hiring, or victims were hiring them because their local law enforcement was doing nothing for these people. They send them to IC3, the Internet Crime Complaint Center, where it goes to die.
Yeah.
And I'm talking victims with losses of millions, and they don't even hear so much back from even a report taker to say that anything ever happened. So they end up going to these third-party companies that charge them. I've had some of those companies charge $30,000 to this victim that just lost $500,000. Yeah. And what can they do? Like, they do kind of, some of them, at that time, a lot of them were awful reports. It's like, this is worthless. Even the ones that do good reports, that do good traces, when you think about what their value proposition is when a victim hires this person, it's not to recover money, because a private company can't go recover money. The only thing they're hiring them for is to get to the bottom of how this thing happened and what the next steps are. But law enforcement is going to have to be the one to take the next step.
Yeah. So to at least gather the evidence to provide to law enforcement.
Right. But here's where the problem comes in, is that if you have an agency that's already working crypto cases, or that's sound in working crypto cases, like we would get one of these third-party companies and be like, okay, that's great. I can't rely on that. I'm going to do my own trace. I'm going to do my own work because I'm capable of it, and this is my investigation.
Yeah.
So what happens to that third-party tracing? It goes in the garbage. It goes into evidence, right? Never to be looked at again. So what did that victim just pay for? They didn't pay for anything. They could have just called me and I would have done it. The alternative to that is, what if they go to an agency that doesn't work crypto? Well, then you get this guy that does nothing about crypto. He's like, okay, that's great. Goes to evidence again, gets referred to IC3, never to be looked at again. So it's really wasting the money. So the reason I bring that up is because these third-party companies could get these certifications, but with the IAFCI, one of the things is, no, there's an ethical component. So not only do you have to stay abreast of your knowledge in crypto, there's also certain ethical requirements that you can't go out and just use this certification to try and take advantage of people and make a bunch of money. So that was why I pitched to them. We just closed the deal. So now the Crypto Investigations Academy is the official training program, training pathway for that certification.
Wow.
So we'll be rolling that out. And that's a huge partnership that we got in with. And then kind of in that same vein, seeing that same issue with the third-party tracers and the lack of ability local law enforcement has to react to these,
Right.
we started our consulting and our analytical service. So we basically act like, we try to say we're kind of like the DNA lab for crypto. So same way your detectives at any agency need to understand what DNA is and why it matters to their case, they don't have to have the specialized tools and training and experience to go back in the lab and actually do the analysis. So that's what we do for our clients on the law enforcement side. We contract with law enforcement agencies. When they get a crypto involved case, we perform the blockchain analytics. We work with their detectives to get the information they need to progress the case.
And so that basically just becomes kind of an expert witness type situation, where if an arrest is made and you have to actually go to court and this kind of stuff, you guys testify.
Yeah, we testify to the blockchain analytics.
You didn't make the arrest.
No.
You provided the information. You can testify that it's all factual and correct, and then court does its thing, and then the officers have made the arrest, and then
and a lot of times it's about recovering money too. And like one thing I try to highlight too is like it's such a wide open field out there because so many agencies are not looking into this at all, and there's a huge potential for seizures, even forfeitures. Like if you take a case and you start building it out, you can identify and what I think the common misconception, there's two real big misconceptions. One is that crypto is untraceable. It's not. It's actually extremely traceable.
Yeah.
Two is that it all goes overseas and it's untouchable. The actuality is, the truth is, yes, a lot of it goes overseas, especially for these international organizations. But the thing that is counterintuitive is that once it goes overseas, those overseas platforms, those exchanges, are no longer subject to Bank Secrecy Act in the U.S. that dictates, in the U.S., BSA dictates that banks have to comply with law enforcement, but it also says what they can't do. It says you can't give this information to law enforcement without proper legal service.
Yeah.
Like it puts all of these checks and balances in. Whereas when it comes to these overseas exchanges, they don't have to comply with U.S. law enforcement. They do so voluntarily, and they'll actually do it much easier. So like when money goes to Binance or something like that, an officer can send a letterhead, just a letterhead, doesn't have to go to a subpoena, anything, to Binance, say, hey, we've identified this as stolen money. Can you put a freeze on it? They'll freeze it. Then you have to go get a search warrant to like take it, but you can get it, even though it's an overseas jurisdiction, and it's actually much easier to get that money and get it back for victims and even for forfeiture. So there's a lot of opportunity that local law enforcement isn't taking advantage of. So that's what we do.
I mean, and that's a good point, because if you look back, even with my agency that I worked for, like I said before, it had a huge narcotics unit, big money coming in. The police department utilized that money through forfeitures to, buy tasers before we ever got tasers. That was that first set of tasers, because you can buy through the 610 forfeiture seizure accounts, you can buy new equipment that you've never had. You can use it to give back to the community. So like for me, what I did with our community operations and stuff, when we have barbecues, ice cream trucks, all the tchotchkes and all that kind of stuff, like all that was money that was used for that. And, so with the closing of that unit and like the going away of the traditional narcotics units and stuff, a lot of times with certain agencies, you lose that ability to have that extra forfeiture money coming in. You're going to get it once in a while through large arrests or whatever, maybe a seizure of a car that was used in a felony, and, oh, hey, cool, we forfeited that and we're going to get a couple $1,000s. But the big money isn't necessarily coming through. So this could be an agency's way to kind of get back into that.
Absolutely. And we're so blessed in Florida in particular. We have the Florida AG's office, the Cyber Fraud Enforcement Unit. They have taken up this whole idea of crypto forfeiture like to the next level.
Yeah,
and they do the whole forfeiture process. That's why I tell agencies that are interested in getting in this, like, you don't even have to have your legal team handle all this. It's like, you can work with us, like to assist in the investigative part of it. We'll assist your detectives in knowing, what are you looking at? What does this mean? Obviously they're doing the investigation. We're just there to support them. But then when it comes to like getting the freeze, all right, it's frozen. Now what? Well, now you just pass it off to the Florida AG's office. They handle the entire forfeiture process. And at the end of the day, they write a check to your agency. Hey, and like I said, City of Fort Lauderdale just got $940,000.
Yeah. Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Awesome. All right. Well, we're running up against our wall, and it always seems like I could sit here and talk to many of these guests. And as Jesse and I did, we talked about a lot of things in the podcast, and I really appreciate you coming on. Well, I mean, I think we could probably do a whole nother one, hearing some more stories and getting more in depth in the crypto world and everything, because I could use a lesson for sure. But thank you very much. I will have all your information in the bottom, and, a lot of this is networking. So we'll see if we can refer you guys out and sort of expand the audience for agencies and everything you guys do. So
before we go though, I have something for you.
Okay.
So at the agency, every year I would make mugs for everyone in our unit. So I figured this was my last print run of our coffee mugs for this last Christmas that I would give out. So this is from the Fort Lauderdale ECU unit. That's our
thank you
thing. And then you have to see on the back, right? So
and that sounded legit to you?
So this was our coffee mug. So this is when we had, that person that was giving the absolutely ridiculous story. You could just sit there sipping your coffee. And when things got a little crazy, you didn't have to say anything to them.
You just kind of turned it around.
Just turn it around. And there you go.
And it says for anybody that didn't hear me say it, and that sounded legit to you. Yeah. And as a patrolman, as an officer, and especially as a detective, when you're talking to people, you start to go, what? At what point do you think that person, knew that much about you or wanted to talk to you that much, all that kind of stuff. So awesome. That's very cool, man. Yeah, these are nice. That's like a laser etched almost or something. Really nice. So thank you very much. New coffee mug. So very cool. And then there's your hat. And thank you very much again. I keep saying it. All of his information will be down in the description below. And we'll get that out to you guys, and we'll catch you on the next one. So thanks a lot, Jesse. Good luck, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Calling all units. Donut Shot has a fresh dozen. Go ahead and take a 1040.